The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Good afternoon and welcome to Chatting with Jocelyn. This is part 2 of my discussion with Senator Bob Guida. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Nice to be here.
Glad you're here. And with Dr. David Strang. Welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
It is. We had a fabulous first half of the show, so I recommend that you listen to that. It's all about how you vote, how your vote is counted, what does it mean, and all the different oddities that go along with it. So in this part of the show, we're just going to dive in, and I'm going to stick my foot in my mouth and say, what is this Windham incident that is going on that has got everybody's pants in a twist? We've got all sorts of accusations floating around. What is going on? What is the truth? What is it that we need to know?
Well, in the town of Windham, and that's how they like to pronounce it, on the ballot for November 3rd, there were 4 races in the New Hampshire House of Representatives that were on the ballot. There were 8 candidates, 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and the Republicans won all 4 seats.
Okay.
A Democrat, Christy St. Laurent, came within 24 votes of winning. So she asked for a recount, which is absolutely her right to do, and I fully support that. On the recount, though, all 4 Republicans on average gained 300 votes. That may not seem like a lot, but compared to their original vote total, that represented an increase of over 6% from their original total. Ms. St. Laurent, who asked for the recount, lost 99 votes, or over 2% of her original total. So suddenly that gap between those candidates increased by over 8%. We've never seen changes like that in the state of New Hampshire, ever. We just don't see differences like that. As we discussed in the previous hour with recounts, most candidates gain a few votes, 5 here, 12 there, but not 300 or over 6%, and we don't see losses to the tune of 99. So that was an enormous difference.
And that's 300
each.
Each one of the 4 Republican candidates got 300 each, 1,200 votes. And the Democrat lost an additional 99.
Correct.
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
That difference increased from 24 votes to almost 424 votes for her. That's how much of a difference this was. We've never seen disparities of that magnitude between the initial machine count and a subsequent hand recount. Now, there were all sorts of theories that immediately started flying, such as, well, there must have been 300 ballots that were not counted. It must have been the maskless voter booth, that people who came in to vote without a mask were directed to that booth, and they must have left the ballots over there and didn't count them. The town clerk came out and said, no, that's not going to fly. We bring those ballots over every hour. We announce it. They're put into the machine. They're not left there the entire day and forgotten. So the easy way to solve this would have been, well, how many ballots did they process in the hand recount? Because the town reported they put 10,006 ballots through the counting process at the site.
Yeah.
Well, when they did the recount, they never recorded how many ballots they handled. That, to me, is inexcusable.
That's odd.
If I were running a recount, I would say, there's a chain of custody. We received 10 boxes of ballots from the town of Windham containing 10,006 ballots, and that's what we recounted, and here are the numbers that we have. But they didn't do that. They didn't count the total number of ballots they handled.
So how many? So we have the paper ballots.
If I can.
Absolutely, please.
That's not necessarily, it's understandable in a sense that those ballots are in a box that is sealed. And the tally for those ballots is sent to the Secretary of State by the town clerk via the state police, hand carrying it, right? So the assumption is made by the Secretary of State that the number of ballots listed, both, in that final report by the town clerk, is the number there. That assumption is a dangerous thing. It leaves open the possibility that someone forgot a box, or so again, that chain of custody, you're exactly right, Dave. That chain of custody
Is essential.
while it is pretty much adhered to, that particular element of it was not carried out by the Secretary of State, perhaps because they used the count from the sheet of paper as opposed to the actual count of the number of ballots in the boxes that were brought.
Interesting. Okay.
And when they complete a recount, they then properly seal the boxes back up, and they're either left at the state archives or returned to the town. But one would think that when they have such a huge disparity, the likes of which even our Secretary of State, Bill Gardner, said we've never seen disparities of this size before, one would think that they would have said before they sealed things back up, well, wait a minute, did we do our math right? Maybe we should count these one more time, or check the total number of ballots that we actually processed here in the recount, and that wasn't done.
So initially, the ballots, the paper ballots, were tallied on 4 AccuVote machines.
Correct.
The recount, which was requested, was done by hand,
Correct.
does not go through, is not tallied through the machines the second time. It's all hand counted.
And done in Concord under very close scrutiny.
Good, that's what I wanted to hear.
With multiple people watching, as we described in the previous hour, if there's a ballot where there was a question, maybe a smudge, that will be set aside and voter intent will be determined and agreed upon by everyone
So
there.
very
in the recount.
professionally carried out. Okay, so then what happened then?
Well, Ms. St. Laurent, as we described in the previous hour, you only get one recount. You can't ask for a
was gonna
second
ask
one if you
that.
don't
Okay.
like the results. So she actually appealed this to the Ballot Law Commission.
Okay.
And on November 23rd, the Ballot Law Commission looked at this and said, we unanimously voted to ask the Attorney General to investigate. In the interim, the attorney for the town of Windham, Bernard Campbell, had written a letter to the Attorney General asking for an investigation. He never received a response.
An
Let
investigation
me go
on-
through the chronology of things here.
Okay.
Because this is, Dave has got the technical side of things covered. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When I became aware of his letter, okay, then I started pushing it legislatively as a senator because I believe the right to vote is sacred and every vote is sacred. And if there's a question, we need to know what happened.
Okay.
And so the general election on the 3rd, Christy
November
St. Laurent appeals, requests a recount.
Yep.
Okay. That recount is done on November 12th.
Okay.
All right. The results, as Dave said, the machines had either failed to count or someone had lost 300 Republican votes for each of 4 Republican state reps. And the machine had either added or someone had somehow lost 99 ballots or votes for Christy St. Laurent. Clearly an anomaly of unprecedented proportions, which the Secretary of State had no idea.
Is an
Openly said-
anomaly also just looking at numbers 300, 300, 300, and 300?
Equally
That they're the
split.
equally
If
split.
it's not 300, it's very close
Very
to it.
close, okay.
Yeah. All right. So Christy St. Laurent, seeing this, now requests, as is her right, a review by the Ballot Law Commission, the BLC we'll call it, right? So she appeals a recount on November 16th. On the 19th of November, the Attorney General's office received a letter sent by town council at the request of the town, okay, asking for an investigation into the Windham incident. What happened that produced these anomalies? All right. And so on November 23rd, Christy St. Laurent's appeal is heard before the Ballot Law Commission, which says no change to the outcome. The 4 Republicans won, Ms. St. Laurent did not. However, and I quote from their minutes, voted unanimously to request the Attorney General to look into the functioning of the voting machines on Election Day.
Functioning of the voting
machines on Election Day, and to join in the request of the town for a general review and investigation of the circumstances involved. That's pretty specific.
That's very
We
specific.
want the machines looked at. This is the Ballot Law Commission. Now, neither they nor the Secretary of State have the ability to do the investigation. That is carried forth in Statute RSA 7:6C, which specifically states that upon receipt of a written complaint, the Attorney General may, at his or her option, investigate to determine whether or not there's been criminal involvement in the election. Words to that effect.
Okay.
The problem became that the interpretation of the Attorney General was that there had to be an allegation of criminality before they could get into the investigation. But that's not what the statute says.
No.
And that interpretation has been reaffirmed by a very high legal person who served on the Supreme Court. We won't mention any names.
No.
Okay?
No. Enough.
So on December, this all resulted in Dave and I talking. He sent a letter, right? I followed up with a letter. All right. And so now, December 10th, I was concerned enough that I asked for a conference call with the Secretary of State, and he didn't know what happened. Stated there. Okay, didn't know what happened, no idea. On December 13th, the AG got Dave's letter. All right. On the 15th, I mailed the letter saying, Dr. Strang has a point here. What happened? Okay. And Attorney General agreed we would have a remote meeting. WebEx is what they use, I believe, with Dave and myself and the Attorney General to address the points in his letter. All right. So talk about your letter.
So this was a 9-page letter that I wrote to the Attorney General's office, complete with graphs, statistics, which primarily focused on the Windham incident. And it was ignored for weeks. As Senator Guida said, I wrote this on December 13th. Weeks went by with no response. And Senator Guida was understandably very upset with this lack of a response. So in late December, he called the Attorney General's office, and within 24 hours, I was getting a call, when can you come down to meet? So we met on January 4th with Senator Guida, myself, Attorney General McDonald, and his assistant, Nicholas Chanyen. And we laid out the concerns, and his response was, well, we have no legal authority to investigate. And we said, yes, you do. It's
Well,
right here in the
people should.
RSA.
Yeah.
It's
That's at 7:6C.
Right.
Right.
and for the viewers out there, RSA is essentially the abbreviation for New Hampshire state law. It stands for Revised Statutes Annotated,
right.
New Hampshire state law. And it's 7:6-C, which clearly states that they have the right to investigate to determine whether there has been a violation of election law. Not to rule out fraud, not to prove fraud, but to determine if a violation has occurred. And they refused. And so
I'm not even going to ask
we
why.
had a
Well,
follow-up
again-
meeting on the 6th. They said, okay, they asked for a ton of documents from the town of Windham. Procedures and what the testing of the machines showed before the polls opened. Things that every voting precinct does. And Windham already had all of these documents, so they turned them over very promptly. And subsequently, as Senator Guida will tell you, they said, we're not going to look at the ballots, and we're not going to look at the machines.
Right. So let me pick up here. On the meeting, on the letter of the 6th that the Attorney General sent, nowhere in it did it indicate a deadline by which time they would have completed an investigation. Well, you don't really have anything until you have a timeline for completion, right?
Right.
So Senator Birdsall, who represents Windham, and myself co-authored a letter to the Attorney General's assistant asking if they had a date certain by which their process would be completed, including investigation machines. Never got an answer. Okay. Never got an answer to his letter. Never got an answer to the town of Windham's letter. Never got an answer to my letter. Okay. And so you start to say, I think we deserve a better level of diligence by the folks in whose hands we entrust the sanctity of our election process.
Correct.
And so that was also the day that Attorney General McDonald stepped back from his role as Attorney General to deal with his pending appointment as the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Okay.
Well,
now
isn't
he's still
that
the acting
just-
attorney. He's still the Attorney General, but he stepped back from active. Allowed an interim Attorney General, Jane Young, I believe, to step into that process. He is still the Attorney General of the state of New Hampshire until March 1st. All right.
It's coincidental timing.
Yeah, well, on February, I don't think there's anything to that. I mean,
No, but I just
the
think it's
vote for the
coincidental.
council was coming up, and he needed to pay attention to that. Okay. So, the most recent conference call was February 5th, and I called this conference call because I was not
3
going
months.
to.
So we're going on 3 months later.
Not going to accept the premise that they had no legal stature, standing to investigate because of the statute. This conference call on the 5th, there's actually a Zoom call, okay, involved 5 senators, the president of the Senate, the majority leader of the Senate, myself as a standing senator, and if you will, the provocateur of all of this investigative request from the Senate, Senator Gray, who chairs election law, Senator Birdsell, whose district it is, Dave Scanlon from the Secretary of State's office, and of course, the Attorney General, Ann Edwards. Ann Edwards is like above Nick Chong, but not the acting AG. She's an associate Attorney General. And in that conversation, I asked several questions, specifically, will you do a machine count? I mean, a check of the machines, run the ballots through and do a check of the machines to ensure the integrity of the election. And the answer was a categorical no. We will not do the machines based on 7:6. I said, okay, would you be willing to get a court order to give you the latitude that you say you don't have to do the investigation? And the answer was patently, no, we're not getting a court order. Now, this is beginning to be troublesome because these people are supposed to serve the people of the state.
Correct.
And they are rejecting the notion that they should do something in an instance where we have the largest ever voting anomaly between a voting machine count and a hand recount in the history of the state. Way outside any parameters they've ever seen before, and admittedly by the Secretary of State, nothing he could understand or figure out why, requested by the town, the Ballot Law Commission, a standing state senator, okay, and a citizen. No, we're not going to investigate. We're not going to take measures that would enable us to expand the latitude we say we don't have.
Right.
So again, concerning.
Very concerning.
I'm not alluding to any misbehavior. I'm just saying there has to be a better and a higher, more diligent sense of duty to the citizens of the state. The uprising, in 10 years in the legislature, starting my 11th
They've never had
now,
this many people
I have
this
never
upset.
seen anything close to this. I'm getting calls from Errol.
My understanding is that in the previous half we had talked about that each one of these tally machines puts out a paper tape.
Right.
Correct.
And it's my understanding that so there's 4 machines, so there's 4 tapes
Correct.
of the tallies. And it's also my understanding, and I may have it wrong, but 1, 3, and 4 had very similar percentages and counts. But one of the machines, I believe it was number 2, was a little off.
Well, it was more than a little off. Let's
being
keep
generous.
in mind that.
But I mean, wouldn't that be enough to say for the Attorney General, this is a little odd?
Well, the fact that we have a hand recount that is widely divergent from the initial machine count should be enough to cause them to investigate. Our own Secretary of State, who's been on the job for 40 plus years, is on the record with numerous publications as saying, we've never seen disparities of this size before. That should be enough for them to, I would hope, take the initiative to say, we're going to investigate this. No initiative at the state level. And furthermore, despite numerous requests from the town attorney, the select board of Windham, the candidate herself, the Ballot Law Commission, myself, there's been no desire to look into this further. So again, the town of Windham actually put out the vote tallies for all 4 voting machines for all of these races. And the town of Windham votes Republican 60% of the time. So if you looked at the down ballot races, county sheriff, attorney, things of that nature, in all 4 machines, Republicans were winning because it's a Republican town.
Correct.
But as soon as you went up ballot to the federal races, well, something happened with machine 2. Suddenly, not only were the totals different, but Republicans were losing the federal races, but only on machine 2. So I asked about this, and Senator Gray said, well, that's because they fed the absentee ballots through only machine 2. And I thought, I'm not sure that satisfies the answer, because if you look at the totals that Jean Shaheen got, first and foremost, she got 200,000 more votes in this election than she did 6 years ago. That's
more.
so astronomical in a small state like New Hampshire to be virtually impossible. You can say all you want, well, that was a midterm election. It was a very hotly contested election with Scott Brown. So turnout was high. So for someone to gain 200,000 or 80% more votes than she got 6 years ago, That's
doesn't seem
impossible
possible.
in the
Yeah.
state of New Hampshire.
Well, and think
So-
about this: the total number of ballots cast was around 800,000. So to gain 200,000 out
Correct.
of that 800,000, that is just
So I actually did a little independent research. I went to the Secretary of State's website, downloaded all of the vote totals by county for 2014 compared to 2020. And the number one county where she had the most increase was Rockingham. She got almost double the votes out of Rockingham County than she did 6 years ago. And that's what we're talking about. I actually looked at the towns within Rockingham where she got the greatest increase in votes. You want to know the town that had the greatest increase in all of Rockingham County for Jean Shaheen?
Who?
Windham. She got 130% more votes than she got 6 years ago.
And a dominantly Republican.
In a predominantly Republican town. She got a little over 2,000 votes in 2014. She got 4,700 this time.
That's very
So
concerning.
when I looked at machine 2, which is where they said that they fed all the absentee ballots through, in order for her to get the totals that she got in that town, she would have had to win 90% plus of the absentee ballot vote to get the totals that she got out of Windham. There's no way that happened. Wow. Not in a predominantly Republican town.
Yep. So we've got about 5 minutes left. So let's switch back to, do we have the rest of the chronology?
So here's the rest of the story.
Yeah,
okay?
but I was going to say,
and I want to tip my hat to the citizens of the state. As I said, in my now starting my 11th and 12th years in the legislature, 6 in the House, and now starting 5 and 6 in the Senate, I've never seen an issue that raised this level of public outcry and concern. And so senators started to hear it. All right. I took it to Senator Morse, the president of the Senate, and Senator Bradley, the majority leader, and I said, we have to answer this call. This is fundamental to the integrity of our elections and to the faith of our population in their ability to have their vote count. Okay. And so I'm humbled to say that the citizens that support this have called out in such numbers, okay, that today the New Hampshire Senate sponsored an amendment that I passed an amendment 24-0 that I sponsored that is authorizing and in fact in remarks that clarify the intent of the Senate requiring virtually immediately, okay, a hand tabulation of all 10,006 ballots, okay, count them all, how many do we have, the one hole that we had in the Secretary of State's process, right?
Yep.
And then to run those ballots through the 4 Windham machines, okay, all the ballots, split them up, run them through the 4 machines. The Secretary of State will observe and assist. The Attorney General will assist and basically direct this. It will be public. It will be streamed live. It will be open to the public, okay? And so this is the result of citizens who listen and watch what's happening and reach out to their legislators and say, we have a problem, we want you to work on it.
Right.
I'm very proud to be a senator in the state of New Hampshire today.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I think you had made a comment about that the citizens can go so far that we can notice something that's odd, that doesn't make sense. We ask questions. When we don't get answers, we go to our representatives. When we don't get answers from the representatives, or some of our representatives try to go higher and take our concerns, and then they're not heard from, that's very upsetting, because we can only go so far, and then it falls on you guys.
Absolutely. This is a we the people issue, the first 3 words of the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. We the people have to have faith and trust in our electoral process. If we don't have the faith that our votes are being counted properly, then our society is going to disintegrate very quickly. We the people do not have the right to go to our town hall and recount votes ourselves or examine machines ourselves. We have entrusted that authority to certain state officials, such as the Attorney General and others. And when those individuals refuse to answer the concerns of we the people, then we need to start asking for their resignation. I don't want this to go that far. I want the citizenry of New Hampshire to be reassured that our voting process is secure, that our votes are counted properly, so that we know with certainty that the people who are governing us in the offices that we elected them to are really the people that we chose to put there.
Correct. and that we can hold them accountable, which you obviously have,
Right.
to do their job.
I will tell you that a critical role often, or rarely, I should say, rarely exercised is the checks and balances system between the three branches. And our Constitution is very clear that the three branches shall remain as remotely apart as is possible, but within the ability to be a united government, right?
Correct.
And so this is definitely a checks and balances issue, because the checks and balances on the election system that were put into the executive branch failed. That's not culpability by a person. Whatever the reason, it failed. And the legislative part, led by the New Hampshire Senate, okay, has stepped up to the plate, and we passed 24-0, a very clear statement that this will be done, okay? I would tell the folks that are watching, you need to be calling your state representatives from now until the House decides to handle this issue, which will be expedited, I'm sure. Okay, but you must tell your state representatives that this is important, that you want a hand recount of all the ballots, that you want the ballots run through the machines, and you want it done in public scrutiny to reassure you that the sanctity of your vote is protected by the integrity of our system.
And we want it done in a timely fashion, because these same machines are going to be used in a couple of weeks.
Correct.
For the town elections.
For the
right.
town elections.
Right.
So we need to know that these problems have been identified or resolved, and if they haven't, then none of these machines should be used at all. And perhaps maybe we, the citizens, should say no use of any of these AccuVote machines until this is straightened out.
That's a choice to be made by the individual towns.
Right.
And I think if the citizens of a town are concerned about the integrity or the accuracy of the machines, you certainly have that right to take it to your moderator and your select board, okay, and make that statement.
Awesome.
It'll involve a little more work, but we have precincts and wards, so the districts are broken down, even in large communities, into bite-sized morsels, and it'll encourage citizen involvement. You know, I tell people, this is your country, this is your state, this is your time to make sure that your elections are fair and true.
I love it. So there you have it. We have Senator Bob Guida and Dr. Dave Strang. We want to thank them very much for shining a light on this issue, on this incident, and explaining to us what is necessary to stay a republic, a sovereign state, and make your vote count 100%. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.